Ponte City Tower stands well above any other building in Johannesburg, South Africa. It is a symbol of the power struggle within. To understand what it means today, its apartheid origin must be looked at.
Ponte City Tower was originally built by the British for the British, who had money coming in through the gold markets, fast cash, and cheap labor. The idea of the massive apartment flat structure was to house educated Europeans who were coming in to fill the market gap for skilled labor that Africans were not given the opportunity to perform.
Construction was completed in 1975 after the massive wave of African countries claiming independence. Amidst African nationalism, Ponte City Tower was built, cutting into the landscape deeper than any other European-built tower, a reminder that Europeans were still in South Africa in the mid-70s. However, prestige of Ponte City Tower did not last long, as the Soweto uprising put pressure on the middle class to move out, giving room for others to move in.
By the 1980s, Ponte had been used as an illegal shelter from the frequent British raids to kick out the Africans living in the city, since by law, no African was allowed to live within Johannesburg unless you were an in-house servant. The once glorified Ponte City Tower was now riddled with trash. In addition, African tenants were forced to take rent rises and poor maintenance increased due to landlords turning a blind eye to people living in these tenants.
The tower, once a statement of separation, became a precursor for what was to come in the early 1990s when apartheid began to dissipate in the legislation. People came back to South Africa after being exiled from the previous government, and African life began to find its way back into the city. Thabo Mbeki, future president of South Africa from 1999 to 2008, lived in a building next to Ponte City Tower. And when the first democratic election was held in South Africa in 1994, it was said that 50 or so of the people elected to the new parliament lived in Ponte and its surrounding area.
Ponte stands today as it had for the past few decades, housing mostly Africans who are looking for affordable living space. The struggle for the right of Africans to own land continues today as land grabbing has gone well beyond living space, most notably in the land used for.
Now, the South African Parliament has voted in favour of new legislation that could see land seized from white farmers. Under the plans, white farmers would be stripped of their land with no compensation, although this does run against the Constitution, which would have to be amended. Here's what the man behind the initiative had to say about it.
The time for reconciliation is over. Now is the time for justice. We must ensure that we restore the dignity of our people without compensating the criminals who stole our land.
Julius Malema there is something of a controversial figure in South Africa. He has been convicted of hate speech, and back in 2016 he said he was not calling for the slaughter of white people, at least not yet. Despite that, though, the country's former president, Jacob Zuma, has described him as a future leader. The rate of murders and violent attacks on farmers and landowners has risen in recent years, and according to official figures, 72% of the country's farmers are white. Earlier, we put the issue up for debate.
People do not own land in South Africa legally. White people arrived here from Europe in 1652. They killed our people, they stole our land, they oppressed us. All the land they have is land that was taken from us by force, and in many instances, by massacres.
We're all visitors to South Africa, including the black tribes of South Africa that came from the north. That is well documented. How they came in and they killed each other for the land and took the possession of the other black tribes. The first occupants of South Africa were the Khoi and the San. So if there's an argument who owns the land, that should be the Khoi and the San.
A person like the one who is now my opponent is a foreigner in South Africa and a land thief. And in fact, talking about the Khoisan, I am Khoisan. He can't say my surname, Mngitama. Ask him to say it. He doesn't. He can't because he's a foreigner. I even worried that Parliament is moving slow, and politicians, we don't trust them. They are using this land thing as a political ball instead of addressing the issue.
This legislation could actually be changed to satisfy the white farmers as well?
There's a lot of corruption involved, and that's why the whole process of land that was taken from people legally in the past and to be returned to them is not going as it should go. You see this I'm holding in front of me, that is the issue. If this goes on, investment in this country would stop. People won't invest in the country. We'll go the same way as Zimbabwe. There won't be production. And then we'll have a Arabic Spring in South Africa about food that's not available to the people of South Africa.
Under European colonists, the Native Land Act basically stripped away land ownership rights from most black people, leaving only 7% to Africans and the most fertile lands for white. By the time the Land Act of 1913 was in place, the country was already well on its way for spatial segregation through land disposition. When apartheid officially ended in 1994, the African National Congress became the dominant party in South Africa. They bought back 4.9 million hectares of land, about 4% of the South Africans' total territory. The issue is that today the majority of the country's most profitable farms are still owned by white people. 95% of the country's wealth is in the hands of only 10% of the population. Through 8 years of economic decline, it was estimated that the country lost 20 billion in export revenue, food aid imports, and economic growth. At the 54th annual conference, the ANC South African Majority Party ruling decided to formally adopt a policy that would reclaim land from white owners without compensation.
Only losing their land to Europeans, but were also losing it to other African leaders. In Sumu, Mali, farmers fell into a great struggle when they found out that their land were now owned by Libyan leader Gaddafi. As Mama Kita, a farmer in Mali, stated, they told us this would be the last rainy season for us to cultivate our fields. After that, they would level all the houses and take the land because Gaddafi owns the land. These farmers and their families' whole life revolved around farming on these lands. But now they are struggling because they have no place to live, no food, no money to have for themselves or to pay for their children's school fees. Organizations like the United Nations and the World Bank argues that land grabbing is a great opportunity because it could help feed the growing global population because of the large-scale farming it brings to places that doesn't have it. However, farmers and villagers argue that land grabbing destroys villages, uproot farmers, and create mass of landless poor. Also, much of the food are taken and given to wealthier nations. In Mali, 3 million acres along the Niger River and its inland delta are controlled by the Office du Niger. In nearly 80 years, only 200,000 acres of the land have been irrigated, so the government considers new investors. The officer of du Niger stated that even if you gave the population their land back, they do not have the means to develop it, nor does the state, and it's our job to develop or state the country.
Hungry and angry, another food riot breaks out on the streets in Algeria. The world food crisis is growing.
Millions of people around the world struggling to buy the most basic of foodstuffs. These are desperate times.
Rich countries are racing to buy and lease agricultural land abroad and secure their food supplies for the future.
Africa, known for its fertile lands and low-priced agricultural real estate, has become the target of wealthy investors.
Demain, il y aura la guerre de l'alimentation. C'est pourquoi des pays comme l'Arabie Saoudite, la Corée, la Chine qui achètent des millions d'hectares, parce que ce sont des pays qui savent qu'ils ne pourront pas se nourrir dans le futur. Depuis la crise alimentaire de 2008, les investissements dans la terre ont explosé, les acquisitions foncières se sont multipliées de façon exponentielle. C'est nous qui produisons l'alimentation pour ce pays-là. 75% de la population du Mali crée son propre emploi à travers l'agriculture familiale. Et c'est le gouvernement qui vient détruire le travail de ces 75% aujourd'hui, au nom de l'investissement. Parce que vous ne pouvez tout prendre à un paysan, tout, mais pas sa terre. Parce que la terre, c'est la seule chose que le paysan possède.
Ni y'a bila le m'a bila k'a fɔ ko mangoro sun hinɛ de kama don ko maa hinɛ kama dɛ o y'a bila ko yɛrɛ hinɛ kama de don parce que o ka pose waati mana se o bɛ t'o sigi yen de ka k'o lafiɲɛ bɔ n'o ta kuma sera o b'a tigɛ o b'a tigɛ ka bɔ yen ka taa n'a ye. Yen ye anw fa ni an mɔkɛw ni an balimaw ka kaburu de ye kaburu de tun bɛ dingɛ nin kɔnɔ u ye an ka kaburu de bɔ ka n'a to u bɛna kaburu in bɔ don min na olu ma mɔgɔ averti u kɔni nana ni mansin ye dɔrɔn ka n'a jɔ a la
ka kaburu wobe bon et puis am jogo mo ko ka fu ban kono tere nu ye min boy bi tele de suna ka fo mi jogo mo ko ayin kono ngata o kuma tala u bisinga chete ka tari ire akele na fo anti molien diu yuri.
One of the problems that plague peasant societies, smallholder societies, is that peasants don't own their land. They date from a time before there was land ownership. So when you have people who belong to this vastly different kind of land regime, they're vulnerable to any force of the state or a company that can come in and literally pull the resources out from under their feet.